time, William, to move toward Mr. Curtis's presentation.
Okay.
Thanks, William.
Good morning. Yes, today is Veterans Day, and as Mr. Rohr said, today we honor the men and women who left their homes, their families, to serve in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard. I'm sure that many of you know a veteran. There are actually, in the 2020 census, there are 17.9 veterans. That's about 7% of all Americans are veterans. Our veterans today have served in Iraq, Afghanistan, they've served in Vietnam, they've served in the Korean War, and we're fortunate enough to have several, actually quite a few, men who served in World War II. They're well into their 90s, some are close to 100 and over. Here in Virginia, there are 725,000 men and women who are veterans. 1 in 12 Virginians is a veteran. Many of our veterans are women. And I want to add that during World War II, when men went off to fight the war, women went into the factories and built military arms. They built airplanes and everything that we needed to fight the war. So the women in America served as well as the men. The men and women today who choose to enter the military, they volunteer. In other words, they want to serve their country. They join because they have a love of our country and a strong belief in our way of life. Every soldier, when you join the military, you raise your right hand and you solemnly swear, you promise to uphold and support and defend the Constitution of the United States. There are other things you say. You want to defend the country as well as you want to obey orders. So when you become a soldier, you take on a very serious responsibility. As some of you know, I am a veteran. I served in the Vietnam War. I wanted to go in the Army because I wanted to serve my country and I wanted to be a soldier. This morning, I want to tell you a story. It's a true story, and it's about when I was in Vietnam, in the Vietnam War. I was a recon soldier. Recon soldiers went out way ahead of everyone. There might have been 12 of us, and we would go out ahead of everybody else, ahead of the other soldiers. This one day, I've been in recon a good while. This one day, the man who usually carried our radio, I'll show you what that looks like. This is what the radio looks like. You wore it on your back. It was pretty heavy. And they said to me, you're going to be the radio operator because the regular radio operator had been injured. He wasn't hurt bad. So now they tell me I'm going to be the radio operator. Well, back then I didn't know I was dyslexic. I knew I didn't make good grades in school. I really wasn't sure back then how smart I was. You know how I always joke that I'm good looking? I wasn't even sure I was good looking back then. Well, when you enter the Army, they test you, they give you all kinds of exams. Well, they tested me, and the Army said that I was smart. In fact, the Army said I was smart enough to be an officer, to be a leader. Well, I didn't think I was smart enough to be a leader. I knew that sometimes I mixed up words and numbers, and I didn't want to make a mistake if I was leading someone, make a mistake and maybe cause someone to be injured or killed because of a mistake I made. Well, the Army didn't know I was dyslexic. I didn't know I was dyslexic. And here I am. They put this radio, heavy radio on my back, and they tell me I'm now the radio operator. So When you're the radio operator, you have to speak in certain radio terms. Like, for example, I was 1-1 Oscar. What that meant was I was first platoon, first squad. Oscar meant operator. Oh, you've heard like Alpha, Bravo, Delta, Charlie. Every letter of the alphabet in the Army has a word. So if I wanted to tell you something that said B, I would say Bravo. If I said my name, it would be Charlie, and so forth. So I had to learn all that real quick. I'd heard the radio operator from time to time, but I had never really used those words. So I wasn't sure how I was going to do. To my surprise, on the first day I carried the radio, I did pretty well. I was comfortable saying I'm 1-1 Oscar, and I said over when I finished what I was saying. When I was done talking, I would say out. If I understood something, I would say loud and clear, or Roger. I knew all those things, so I was doing okay. The second day I carried the radio, the captain told my sergeant, we were in the jungle, and there was a canal near us, and we had to cross it. So my company commander, our captain, he told my sergeant, I'm a corporal now, it's one step above a private. He tells my sergeant, get your radio operator, take a scout and another soldier and go up the trail in the jungle. So picture that we're walking in the jungle, we're going up the trail, the scout is first, I'm second, the sergeant is behind me, and the fourth soldier is behind him. You know how in social skills, when I say there's a time to talk and a time to listen, when you're in recon, when you're in the infantry, when you're doing something that's very serious and dangerous, you know when to talk and when to listen. We didn't talk to each other. We made hand signs and we just looked at each other and our eyes spoke. We knew what we were doing. So we're walking up this trail very quietly. We didn't know, we suspected there might be enemy, but we didn't want to surprise them and we didn't want them to surprise us. So we finally get to where we need to be, and there's where the canal came back. And we were sent to get a sampan. Now a sampan is like a rowboat, but it's a little narrower and a little bit longer than our rowboats. But we got in this rowboat, four of us. I was in the front with a radio on my back. And we're paddling back to our unit. The scout was paddling, and he was paddling so easy in the water that you couldn't even hear the paddle go through the water. We were that silent. When we were in that situation, we used our ears to listen for any sound that's different from what we were listening and hearing. Anything different, we used our eyes. So I'm in the front and I'm looking. There's palm trees on each side of this canal. The canal was probably as wide as, say, 2 roads, and the water was very deep. So as we're going along quietly, we're about halfway to reaching our men. I hear coming up behind us a helicopter. And when the helicopter flew over, I saw that it was a Cobra gunship. A Cobra gunship, I have a picture of one. This is a Cobra gunship. It's an attack helicopter. You really can't see maybe from the picture, but there are rockets. In the front, there's a minigun. The minigun fires 4,000 rounds per minute. 4,000 rounds in a minute. They usually fire at about 30 to 50 rounds. And it has, like I said, rockets. There are 2 pilots in the chopper. Well, as the helicopter flew over, I saw that there was rockets still left on the aircraft, and I figured out pretty quickly that he was returning, the helicopter was returning from a fire mission. So as he turned, well, as he was kind of moving away, he slows up when he saw us. He slows up and he turns. And when he turned, I thought to myself, what's he doing right away? And as he turned, I realized that he was taking a look at us. Now, remember, we were in a Vietnamese boat. He's up in the air. We're dressed in green and wearing a helmet. We could be the enemy. So I realized that possibly things could go real bad real quick. So I took the handset and I called the headquarters. And I said, this is headquarters, this is 1-1 Oscar. So I'm talking to the captain's radio operator and I said, there's a helicopter gunship above us, and I believe he thinks we're enemy. He's getting ready to blow us out of the water. And the radio operator for the captain, I said, do you have their frequency? In other words, can you call that helicopter by chance, or someone that's giving orders to the helicopter, and tell them we're friendly? Don't fire on us, we're friendly. Well, the radio operator on the other end for the captain says negative, meaning no, you're on your own. And then he said the word out, meaning that he can't help me. So now I'm sitting there in the front of the sampan. This helicopter gunship is starting to stabilize. I knew what that meant. That meant that they're getting ready to fire the minigun. And I'm thinking to myself, if I were to even fall into the water, by the time I got the radio off my back in this deep water, I probably drowned. So I kind of felt like I had to do something very quick and very smart. I had done everything the Army had trained me to do. I had done everything correctly using the radio. I had asked for help. Help couldn't help us. So now the four of us basically were waiting for the gunship to do its job. So I'm sitting there for just a second, and you know, being dyslexic, we think outside the box. So what I did, just very quickly, almost instinctively, I removed my helmet. And back then you have to use your imagination. I had blonde hair, and I pointed to my hair very quickly, because Vietnamese people, their hair is black. I couldn't have been a Vietnamese if I had blonde hair. So I'm pointing to my hair. Thank goodness the two pilots in the helicopter gunship saw that we were friendly. They kind of did this with the aircraft and flew off. And after that, we paddled back to our unit and we hooked up with them and we continued on our operation. The reason I tell you this story is, you know how I'm always saying that in my mind, my dyslexia is a gift. I believe that dyslexia is a gift. That day in Vietnam, my dyslexia saved my life and the life of my sergeant, our scout, and another soldier. So I like to think that story is a good example of it's wonderful to be dyslexic in my mind. That's my Veterans Day talk. I'm very proud to have served, and I like being a recon soldier. I liked it. And I'm proud to have been a recon soldier. So I have, in the commons area, I've brought in 2 shadow boxes of some of my military things for you to look at today. So when you go by, take a look at some of the things, and you can see a little picture of me. That's what I looked like when I was a soldier. And some of the things I use, some of my patches and different things you can look at. So that's the conclusion of this year's Mr. Curtis Veterans Day talk. Thank you.
Mr. Curtis, on behalf of Riverside, all the students and teachers, thank you much. Thank you so much for your service to our country, and thank you for your service to Riverside. Please join me, boys and girls. Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Riverside students, everything you do today, everything you do it with kindness, do it with joy, and do your best. Thank you. Goodbye.